hard to say.
Hey, good morning. Welcome to my TED Talk. I'm gonna groove out a little bit to Lauryn Hill here because she got a message and I got a message too. Lauryn Hill, this is off her Unplugged album, and the song is called "I Find It Hard to Rebel." And this is what my TED Talk is going to be about this morning.
All your false pretenses, but what you fail to see.
Lauryn Hill is telling us about rebellion, and I think it's appropriate that I talk about rebellion and riots based off the current political, social activities that are going on today. And so, once again, I say welcome to my TED Talk, and let's get it on. You all know me, Alexander King, and we're going to talk about Black people, rebellions, and riots. A riot is a violent disturbance of the peace by a crowd. Where rebellion is different. Rebellion is an act of violence, an open resistance against a government or established ruler or system. And so you must understand that my oppressed Negro people don't riot per se, but rather we rebel. We didn't win a major sports championship. No, we lost another Black life to a violent oppressor that is protected by a system that continues to systematically eliminate the Negro people through violence and corrupt system of injustice. And so there are those who say that retaliation violence is not the answer. They advocate that we stand by and let peaceful demonstrations solve the problem. Everyone says that we need to take that rage and anger and store it away like lightning in a bottle. And history has taught us that somewhere someone must rebel in violence because the colonizer doesn't speak the language of peace. My Negro people, we must get serious and realize that you cannot sing your way out of bondage. You cannot pray your way out of shackles. You cannot march your way to equality. Those days are long gone, and this is a new era. You think you got here from singing, marching, and praying. Do you not? If so, I believe that it's you who are blind, uneducated, and ultimately a part of the problem. For every Brother Martin, you see, there was an entire nation of Prince Malcolms. For every Al Sharpton, there was a Huey Newton and an Eldridge Cleaver and a Fred Hampton. You see, we have always rebelled in violence. And from the shores of Sierra Leone and the Canary Islands of the 15th century to this very day, we have rebelled in violence. And we must continue to rebel in violence until the day arrives that the oppressor no longer oppresses and the system no longer protects the injustices of those appointed to protect the people. And as soon as we gain national attention, they have a way of convincing us to stand down in the name of diplomacy, which usually ends with little to no results. And this type of timid action propels us into a cycle of injustice over and over again. And so a rebellion without a leader is just a mob taking action. Give us a leader and you got a rebellion. Give us organization and you have a movement. Give us victory or give us death. Unfortunately, the Black preacher has been and continues to be the personal agent of the oppressor. See, whenever there is a civil or uncivil disobedience, the demonstrator is what they do is they go and they get the Black preacher to quell the Black establishment. The oppressor immediately turns to the Black preacher to negotiate a peaceful quelling of the Negro delegate. And so, for instance, after the 1965 rebellion in Watts, Los Angeles, Dr. King told the president of the United States in a secret meeting, quote, "You've got to give me more victories if I'm to keep the people nonviolent," end quote. So I say again, rebel if you must. Like the Mau Mau rebels of Kenya, like the Zulus of South Africa, like the cargo on the Amistad, like the colonial citizens of Detroit in 1966, New Jersey, in Baltimore, in Cincinnati, in Los Angeles, in Chicago, Atlanta, and other places, we rebel. And listen not to those who say we could best spend that energy in another direction. The oppressor is a violent beast, and the only language he seems to respond to is the language of violence. And sometimes it becomes necessary to speak to him in a manner that is on par with his own actions and limited understanding. That's the language of fire and brimstone and anger and violence. And so I say to you, speak to the devil using the language of the oppressed. And I understand that critics will argue that the destructive nature of a rebellion only serves to further destroy the urban decay city in which the African lives. And I respectfully ask the counter question. Are you referring to the city where we have less than 5% ownership of the buildings? Are you talking about the city in which the Jews, the Arabs, the Koreans, and the whites own the businesses? Are you referencing the city in which the European police officer patrols and consistently harasses? Are you referring to the city where redlining and illegal housing practices have systematically corralled the Negro into an urban arena which sees substandard municipal support, inadequate housing fit for humans, and access to liquor stores that dot the landscape at every block? Perhaps you're suggesting that we work to preserve the already condemned buildings that have little to no value until the wealthy elite decide to come in and gentrify the block, thereby elevating the property value and forcing the original Black inhabitants out of the neighborhood. My brother Huey P. Newton didn't believe in the power of civil disobedience. Him and I fundamentally disagree on its effectiveness and purpose. And he argued that, quote, "The Negro is divided, confused, fighting amongst ourselves. We are still in the elementary stages of throwing rocks, sticks, and empty wine bottles and beer cans at racist police who lie in wait for a chance to murder unarmed Black people." He continues on and says, "The racist police have worked out a system for suppressing these spontaneous rebellions that flare up from anger, frustration, and desperation of the masses of Black people. And we can no longer afford the dubious luxury of the terrible casualties one only inflicted upon us by the police during these rebellions," end quote. Huey P. Newton. His points have merit, but I do not fully agree that a rebellion is futile and an unnecessary act. Rather, civil disobedience is the language of the oppressed. And it is so because it is an effective way to express the sheer energy and rage of anger while grabbing the full attention of the oppressor. After all, it's not like you're just going to sit down and have a civilized discussion with those to seek you, keep you shackled and dormant. Therefore, I conclude that a rebellion is a necessary impetus in the long march of liberation. It is destructive in nature and violent, and yet effective as well. I believe that a rebellion needs to be coupled with other forms of resistance and attacks on the system of oppression, but I do not subscribe to any notion that a rebellion is ineffective. With that, I conclude with the almighty words of Mother Teresa as spoke in the 1989 Spike Lee movie, Do the Right Thing, when she screamed with the voice of all the ancestors, "Burn it down, burn it down. All power to the people. This has been my TED Talk on Black people, rebellions, and riots. Peace.